Hey, so Peter, I know it's been like about a month. What big things have been happening in your space? I do see a new logo on the wall. Gorilla's back here.
Yep.
What do you think about the hyper localized delivery space?
Yeah, I think it's super fascinating. So we just invested in Gorillas. What they do is they will deliver anything from like a convenience store in 10 minutes or less. And the delivery charge is really low. And the way they do that is they have these small warehouses, but they have lots of them all over a city. So they operate today in Europe. So they'll have these warehouses everywhere, and then they just have people on bicycles.
I was wondering why I hadn't heard of them.
Yep.
Is it gorillas.eu?
I don't remember the web address.
Okay.
I think it's just gorillas.com.
Wait, how would they be different from like an Amazon competitor here?
Big competitor in the US is probably Instacart and also GoPuff. The big difference is that GoPuff and especially Instacart, they don't go to a localized warehouse that's owned by the company. They go to the grocery store. And so when you add in this layer of like, okay, I got to go to the grocery store, I got to load everything up at the grocery store, and then I got to haul it all over to this person's place, that's like minimum like 45 minutes. But if you have the warehouse and it's really close because you're in a urban environment with dense populations, they don't have to go very far, right? It's a few blocks. And if you limit the things that they're buying to convenience store items, so sodas, chips, milk, eggs, that kind of stuff, then you can operate out of these really small warehouses, and you can do delivery really fast. And so all of it, and you can do it at very low cost per delivery. Right? Because you're not taking 40 minutes of somebody else's time. You're only taking like 10 minutes. And so what you have is like, yeah, I kind of feel like I want a Coke right now. And it's going to cost me like, the $2 for the Coke plus a $1 delivery fee. I'm going to do that.
And a person delivers it.
Yep. And you get it 10 minutes, right?
Every time. Okay.
So what's fascinating is that people start using it. They try it out once, twice, whatever, and then they get hooked. Right. And they're like, oh man, I'm hungry. I could really go for blah, blah, blah. But I don't want to wait 2 hours for it to show up if I use like Uber Eats or I use DoorDash or some of these others. What is interesting though is DoorDash knows this. And so if you pay attention when you're driving around in some of their larger urban environments, you can actually see what are called dark stores, which is a mini warehouse where DoorDash is now starting to offer the same service. So it's this new evolution in what's happening with on-demand delivery that I think is super fascinating.
Will drone delivery ever be a thing?
I think it could be, but I think there are so many things we got to figure out before it is that I think it's a ways out. I mean, there's the regulatory, there's the technology, there's the actual just like mechanics of how it all works.
How safe it actually is.
How safe is it? Yep. I think it's already functioning in certain environments. Like I know there are companies that deliver like medical supplies via drone in Africa because you can deliver medical supplies very quickly in, high need situations via drone that would be very, very difficult to do any other way. So like clearly it can work. Can it work at scale and everything else? I don't know. Probably someday. But.
Okay. What about some of these other logos on your wall? Maybe instead of asking my question, we should go through what are the new logos? Why did you make these investments? Let's pull up your investment thesis. I saw you had one from 2012 there. It looked really interesting.
Yeah, that's a really old one. So we just also invested in a company called Arcadia down there in the corner. They have a really interesting solution around solar and community solar. So what happens is in the US, if you don't own your home or you don't live in a place with a lot of sunlight or your roof is not optimally positioned for the sun or you live in an apartment or a condo, solar is not really an option for you, like on the roof solar. And so there's that disconnect, right? There are people that want access to solar power because they want the cost savings and they want the environmental feel-good story about it.
And the tax benefits, right?
Well, and maybe they want tax benefits where they're included. So you have that issue on the one hand, and then on the other issue, you have this whole new concept. Well, it's not super new, but this thing called community solar, where a developer will go in, they buy a tract of land, they dump a bunch of solar panels on there, and they connect it up to the grid. They now need to sell that power to consumers, whether they're businesses or residential. And so what Arcadia does is they become the link between those two. They work with the solar developers and sign them up, and then they go and work with just people in the residential space, and they get them signed up. And the benefit is you get the cost savings of using solar if you live in a condo. And you're able to point to, hey, my power comes from this community solar farm. And the community solar farm is able to sell their power. And then Arcadia sits in between and becomes kind of the payment gateway between the two of them.
Are the solar farms or the community solar farms nearby, or could it in theory be in another state?
Theoretically, it could be in another state, but for the most part, they are somewhat close. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Now, they do also have another program where they actually charge a fee so it's not really a cost savings thing, but you do get to say like, hey, my power is supplied by solar, and that's a nationwide product, and that's also been really effective for them as well.
Okay. What was the deciding factor for Gorilla and Arcadia? Was there like one or two like points where you said we invested because we saw, MRR growth of 200+% per year for the last 3 years?
I think for Gorillas, the thing that really sealed it for us is that people love the product, right?
Okay.
So their NPS scores are incredibly high. But the more telling factor is not like an NPS score. It's that people come back and they buy again and again and again, and they buy more every subsequent time. So that was like kind of the big thing for Gorillas, is like, this is a service people really, really love, right? I think for Arcadia, there are a lot of things, but for the most part, it was just like, hey, this is like the future, right? They are solving a massive pain point on two sides of this marketplace. And from what we can tell, they are the leader in the space doing it. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we got conviction there. And what you're seeing is like there's some regulatory issues that Arcadia faces as this whole community solar thing starts to really take off. But the trends are that, the tailwinds are all in their favor, right? Every state is opening up more and doing more with alternative energy and renewable energy and those types of things. So it just seemed like, hey, everything's headed this way, and this appears to be the lead horse. So let's bet on them.
If you had to pick the future of clean energy, would you pick solar? Would you pick nuclear?
I think both have a very important role to play. I have solar on my roof. That said, I think nuclear is a really good option, and probably a superior one that we should take more seriously than we currently do. But for a lot of reasons, fear and regulatory and so on and so forth, we're probably not using it to its maximum potential. And I don't know if that ultimately changes.
Okay.
In which case, I think solar, becomes probably a more dominant long-term solution.
Perfect. What other logos are going to pop up on your wall? Are there more?
So other deals that we're really excited about that are new, we invested in a company called Tradex.
Okay.
Tradex is solving the inefficiencies that exist within global auto trade.
Mm-hmm.
So if you live in Nigeria, for example, there are no cars manufactured that I know of in Africa. Everything has to be imported. You can think about like, what are the challenges of getting a car in Nigeria?
Okay.
Well, you've got to go to a market that has cars, right? So maybe you go to China, maybe you go to the US, maybe you go to Europe. You then have to pay the money up front, right? Because people aren't going to trust you with credit, most likely, right? Buy the car, you got to ship it to Nigeria. You have to get it through customs duties. You have to have it registered and on the road, right? Before you can start using it. And so these vehicles, they end up costing as much as like 2 times what they would cost in a more developed market. What TradeX is doing is basically saying, hey, look, we'll handle all of that for you. We'll bring the cars to you. You buy them from us in country. And thereby they can reduce the cost of that vehicle drastically compared to what it would be through kind of traditional sourcing methods. But it's still higher than what it would sell for in a domestic, more market like the US or like Europe. And so they're able to make money on that arbitrage opportunity, if that makes sense. And so they're opening it up because there are all these vehicles that sit all around the world that are more valuable in some markets than others. And they're basically unlocking all of that value by creating a platform that makes it very easy to buy and sell cars internationally.
And you said there's no one's manufacturing cars in Africa that you're aware of.
That I'm aware of.
Like, blows my mind.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Guess how many people live in Nigeria? I didn't know this.
500,000? Half a billion, sorry.
Well, anyways, there's 200 million people in Nigeria.
Okay.
In a country that's like the size of, it's like smaller than Texas.
Okay.
And no cars manufactured there.
Crazy.
So you can think about like the demand that exists. And that's just Nigeria. That's like, let alone Kenya, South Africa, Zambia. I mean, all those other countries, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's, I believe, 1.2 billion people that live in Africa. So there's huge markets. And it's not just Africa. It's South America. It's Southeast Asia. there's a huge trade just between the US and Canada where there are huge efficiencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's Tradex. That's what they do. Really excited about what they're doing, and their growth is phenomenal.
And you've got Tiled up there. I know Daryl. Do you call him Daryl or Kevin?
Daryl.
Daryl.
You know all about Daryl and Tiled. Why don't you tell us about
I don't
that?
know all about them. Love Daryl as a friend. I wish he was a better friend. Not that he's a bad friend. That just totally came off the wrong way. He's like, so the way I would put it with Daryl is, as we left BYU, I don't think I took him as seriously as I should have, because, you've got your cliques of like people who are wannabe entrepreneurs. And then Daryl was the quiet person quietly doing this. I think he had a kiosk business at weddings. He was actually probably one of the few entrepreneur students who were he was an actual doer.
Yep.
And I met him at a pitch conference right towards the end of graduating, but I wish I would have been more friends with him then. I'm the one who introduced him to Lucidchart, so I think I should get like a finder's fee for that. He made some pretty coin there. But Tiled, the way I look at Tiled, what can I say or not say? The way I look at Tiled is the things and the vision he had for Lucid, he is rolling forward in Tiled. Would that be a fair?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Tiled is a really interesting platform. So if you think about how content is created and then distributed, one of the big innovations is the PDF, right? That Adobe really pioneered. And what Tiled is trying to do is bring PDFs into the 21st century by saying, okay, we don't live in a static environment like a PDF, right?
Mm-hmm.
We live in a dynamic environment today where we're used to videos and polls and pictures and the ability to manipulate content on the fly. And so that's what Tiled is building. They're building this low-code, no-code solution that allows people to create highly engaging, dynamic content that's served in a platform that's similar to a PDF, in that like a designer can come in, they can create an amazing piece of content that's highly interactive, and then they can push it out to thousands, millions of people to consume that content, and they can make changes quickly on the fly.
How are they different than Prezi?
So Prezi, I mean,
because Prezi's like the one in my mind. You had the PowerPoint for years, and then at least when I was in college, that became big. And then since then, I apologize, Daryl, I don't use Tiled, but my understanding is it's more for like sales forces at larger companies like Vivint, where they want to control, where they want to change content on the fly. If hey, there's a new alert or something that happens, instead of chasing down every PDF, they can just change everything retroactively. And so I don't think I'm in the ideal market space right now for what Tiled is targeting.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably not, right? And you're right. Like that is some of the functionality, is the ability to make changes to that content on the fly and affect those changes for thousands of people that are viewing and consuming that content. But there's also an element of like the content delivery through Tiled is so much better than just a standard PDF, right? Like I can click and see videos. I can manipulate some of the data. I can move through it and navigate through it in a way that's more like a website type experience rather than just scrolling.
Why would I just not create a Shopify store, or not like a Shopify, but like a Square site?
So why not just create a website, period, right? Well, the problem though is that if you create a website, you have to have connection to the internet, right? Okay. You may have to have some sort of restrictions on who can see it. How do you create every website to be personalized to that individual, right? So there's certainly a lot of similarities to having a website, but there's a lot more control and customization and individualization that occurs with Tiled.
Okay. And then with Tiled, why did you invest? Are you looking for, like, what was it that pushed you over the edge?
So with Tiled, again, this is kind of like Arcadia in that, we looked at everything that was happening and said, hey, this seems to be the future, right? Like PDFs, 10 years from now, are PDFs really going to be the way that we consume content, or are there going to be other content delivery forms that are more interactive, more engaging, more like what we're used to seeing everywhere else than a PDF? And it seemed like that's the direction that everything is heading. And so with Tiled, they've built a really compelling product. They've got incredible customers and growth there. And then they have support from large companies like Adobe, who have actually put money behind the company and said, hey, we think what they're doing is super interesting and has the potential to be majorly disruptive as this kind of like new content delivery methodology.
Okay. Combined, all three of them, how much revenue are they doing? That way you can still be anonymous. The people want to know. I want to know. But you guys do later stage. Every company on there probably is doing north of $1 million in revenue. per year, right?
Yeah, they're all doing north of $1 million.
Are they doing north
They're
of 10
doing
million?
somewhere between $1 million and $1 billion in revenue.
$1 million and $1 billion. You got to like, this is like the population of Nigeria. We got to like narrow it down.
They're all doing very well.
Why are you so confidential with that number?
In this case, because I'm actually under NDA
With all of them?
With all of them.
Okay, that's fair.
The other 2 deals we did that are kind of fun is a company called Car Putty and then Next Insurance. So a lot of people may be familiar with Next Insurance. It's if you're a small business, you need insurance, business insurance. Next is a really fast, easy, and affordable way to get insurance coverage.
So I can get my DOE insurance, directors and executive insurance?
Yeah, I think they offer that and just general liability, those types of things.
Those have been some of the internal discussions at Codebase this past month.
Well, you should check out Next. They're
Okay.
great. And then Car Putty is super interesting. So they are trying to disrupt auto financing.
Okay.
So if you look in fintech, this is really interesting. Everyone has really focused on like discretionary credit, mortgages, right? Like all these other things. Nobody spent a lot of time on auto financing. And yet auto financing is gigantic. It is like this massive, massive market in terms of the volume of loans that go out every year. And there really has been like zero innovation. And so that's what Car Putty is doing. It's some of the founding team of SoFi plus the CEO who's owned a number of Nissan dealerships and so it's the marriage of like his expertise running dealerships and understanding the auto industry from soup to nuts, as well as the team from SoFi who understands, fintech and how to bring products to market. And what they're doing is they're creating an auto line of credit. So rather than every time you buy a car, you go through the process of applying for a loan, getting a loan, and then buying the car, right? Whether you do it through the dealership or you get your own financing. What they do is you apply once. They give you a line of credit. It's $50,000, it's $100,000, whatever you qualify for based on your income. Mm-hmm. And then you can just walk into the dealership and say, I want to buy that car all cash, right? And you use your line of credit to pay for the car.
Okay.
And then what they do, which I think is super interesting, is they'll pull a ton of data on the car you just bought, and they'll keep you updated on the value of the car over time. So if the car is going to hit a valuation cliff, they'll notify you and say, hey, John, that RAV4 you bought, that's really cool, but it's going to hit this valuation cliff where it's going to drop in value like in 3 months. You may want to sell it now before it hits that cliff and then go buy something else with it. Right?
Okay.
So they provide all this like really interesting data to help you make better informed decisions, both when you purchase as well as like when you come off of a lease, for example. Should you buy out the lease or not, right? They'll give you the data you need to know for that. And then you only apply once for this line of credit. So, you sell the car and you use the line of credit to buy something else. So it makes it really easy.
Are they focusing on the new car market or the used car market?
Both.
Okay. How has COVID affected them? Because I know some other players in the space and it's just devastated their business.
Yeah.
Like if you drive by, most dealers don't have inventory. And when we purchased a car for my wife, like it was almost like, show me, give me a sheet of what cars are coming in the next 2 months.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go test drive something similar and then buy that. And by the time we'd come back after test driving, a lot of those cars had been picked off.
Yeah.
Even within like 30 minutes. Like it's crazy right now.
Yeah, it is nuts. There's huge supply shortages. For them, they just barely started. So they're a relatively new company. They're working on refinancing your car, so allowing you to get into a better rate. They're working on lease buyouts, so helping people kind of decide whether or not they want to buy out that lease, and then helping people that want to buy new cars.
Okay. So, well, awesome. Well, it sounds like you've had a busy quarter. We've
been busy.
Have these all been done in the third quarter?
Most of them, yeah.
Okay. Well, congrats.
Thanks.
All right. Well, let's wrap up this podcast. Join us next week as we talk through different VC-related questions. This is Peter Harris, University Growth Fund. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.